Hello, wherever you are, and welcome to our lunchtime live stream. This is the time of day when we sit round the tables in our virtual Peedie Kirk and our thoughts turn to food. If your thoughts turn to scallops, well, we've got a demonstration on video of how to cook scallops with some foraged elements such as seaweed and chickweed. And that's been provided for us by Paul Doull at the Foveran. So there's a link to that from the website or on our YouTube channel. And in the meantime, our first guest of this lunchtime session is with me now, and that's Dr. Monica Arso-Civil of the University of St Andrews. Hello, Monica, and welcome.
Hi, Howie. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You study harbour seals, and my first question is going to be a very basic one. We know of common seals, we know of grey seals. What about harbour seals?
Well, actually, harbour seals and common seals are the same species. And maybe if we could show the first slide, I can show you what they look like compared to grey seals. So in the UK, we have two species of seals, the grey seal, which is the one on the top of the left picture, and the harbour or common seal, which is the one that's in the bottom. And they're a bit different, but it takes a bit of time to maybe kind of like see those differences. So the grey seals are the ones that are bigger, especially males, and they have this kind of longer nose and this like white kind of pattern in their pelage. And they are the ones, grey seals are the ones that you typically hear howling, and like you kind of, we call them like they're singing. And then the harbour seals are your typical banana-shaped seals that you see them when they're like just holding out. And they are smaller, they have a different pattern, much smaller marks, and they have a much more dog face kind of shape of their head, even when they are in the water, which you can see the pictures on the right-hand side. So the ones that I'm particularly studying is the harbour seals, the ones at the bottom of the picture.
So you're studying harbour seals in Orkney waters. How are you going about it?
Well, so the motivation for the project is that there's been a regional decline in the numbers of harbour seals in different areas of Scotland. So in Orkney, for example, there's been a decline for up to 85% in the numbers of harbour seals since around the year 2000. And the same goes with the east coast of Scotland and the north coast. But then on the west coast, the numbers of harbour seals have been either stable or increasing. So we're trying to figure out what might be behind those differences. So one way to do this, and maybe we can show the next slide, is by actually following individuals and identifying them. So I've spent my last few summers in Orkney, in places like Barray, at a distance with a digiscope, which is attached to a camera, and I can take pictures of the seals that haul out during low tide. And each seal has a unique pelage pattern. So for example, here on the left, you have seal number 84, which we nickname Cauliflower, and she's a female, and we've seen her since 2016. And it's important to know if they're there or they're not there, because it tells us about their survival rates. And then we can also see if they have pups or not, and whether they have pups as frequent as we would expect for a harbour seal. So for example, this female, we've seen a pup in 2016, in 2017 and 2018, and then in 2019 didn't have a pup, or had it, but we didn't see it, but that's also normal. So we kind of follow these animals through each year, and then we can figure out what's going on with their birth and natural mortality rates, and whether there's differences between different areas like Orkney versus, for example, Isle of Skye.
Now that is fascinating, being able to tell the difference between the different types, between each individual.
Yeah, so they when they are born, harbour seal pups, they already have their adult coat. So you can see it's got this like white and black pattern on the picture on the left in the middle, because they've shed their white coat, which is a difference from grey seals. Grey seals are born with their white coats, and then they kind of change it. But harbour seals from birth, they already have that adult coat, and so you can follow these individuals theoretically through their lifetime, because that pelage is not going to change even when they molt every year.
What could be the reason? What could be the reason for the difference between the big decline on the east coast and the apparently strong survival on the west?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and this is the primary question we're trying to figure out. So there's different things we're considering. So we're looking at what's the effect of competition with grey seals, for example. Obviously, grey seals are in the same waters. They do target the same foraging resources. They're a bit bigger. So whether there is a competition between the two species, we're looking at the effect of predation on harbour seals, both from killer whales, but also from grey seals, because they are known to attack harbour seals. And we're also looking at things like the exposure of seals to these natural toxins that we get when we get algae blooms, and whether that could affect their health, basically their health condition that could kind of compromise their survival or maybe their reproduction. So these are like the three main factors we're looking into for the last few years. This is an ongoing project funded by the Scottish Government.
So this is something that's going to go on for a number of years.
Yeah, so we've just finished kind of a first 5-year block, and it looks like we are likely to be continuing. So this summer we couldn't come up to Orkney for fieldwork, obviously, but we'll be back next year and the following one for sure, and we'll keep on collecting these data to try to figure out what's going on.
Is this something that the general public would be able to contribute to in some way with information?
Well, what's been really, actually, for me, really useful so far is because I've been the one up in Orkney, and actually just talking to people on their knowledge of the seals, because obviously the people living in Orkney are the ones that are seeing these changes also sometimes in the numbers. So it's been very helpful to know where to go, for example, for big haul out sites. And if people are interested, I do maintain a blog about the project, which is shown in this slide. So here you have the address. Actually, if you Google Harbour Seal Decline Project, you will find it too. And I try to keep up to date with what we have been doing. There's a contact email address that you're more than welcome anyone to come and ask, drop an email about questions. And then you can keep an eye on our progress. And once we start putting out results, then have a look at those.
Monica, thank you very much indeed. We'll wish you success and look forward to hearing progress.
Thank you so much for having me today. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. And now we welcome back Eric Walker, who's continuing his look at the night sky, and he emphasizes it's for absolute beginners. Now, Eric, one of my problems is I can usually manage one simple constellation, like, for instance, the plough, but after that it gets more difficult. Can you help me?
I certainly can. Good afternoon, Howie, and it's great to catch up with you again. Well, as Howie said, this little slot is for absolute beginners. Anyone can do this. It's naked eye viewing and commonly available binoculars. That's all you need. No telescopes are required at all. And I'm presenting this each day as if I was viewing from North Ronaldsay later at night, about 10 p.m. to 11 p.m. So if we head on to the next slide, first of all, as Howie was asking there, we need to know the difference between constellations and asterisms. Now, a constellation, that's a formally named area of the sky, and an asterism is a visually obvious collection or a pattern of stars that's easily recognizable. In this little session, I'm going to help you identify and locate two of the best known and easy to find asterisms in the autumn sky. So first, if we are looking south and southwest, you'll see a whole heap of constellation names that you might recognize. Pegasus, Cygnus, Aquarius, for example. And if we look at the next slide, if we focus on this highlighted area, you'll see three very bright stars. And onto the next slide, if you draw an imaginary triangle to join them up, you have just identified your first major asterism in the night sky, called the summer triangle. Now, asterisms and constellations are used to help us locate other objects in the night sky. I'm going to use the summer triangle in another lunchtime talk, And if we go on to the next slide, I'm moving around to the north and northwest now. And next slide, we'll focus in on an area that will likely be very familiar to you all, the constellation of Ursa Major, the Great Bear. So the next slide, if I highlight these 7 stars, you will instantly recognize your second asterism, the Plough, or Big Dipper, or La Grande Casserole in French. The Plough is an excellent asterism for finding other things in the night sky. We refer to it as a signpost in the sky. And here's how it works. Next slide. If you extend the tail or the curve of the Plough, you can arc to Arcturus. It's a distinct and very bright red coloured star. And if you go into the next slide, draw an imaginary line up through the 2 end stars of the Plough, the pointer stars, and you have just found the pole star or North Star. Follow that star and you will end up at the North Pole. And that's it from me today, Howie.
Well, Eric, thank you very much. And just to say, I guess it's moving, is it, from the known to the lesser known?
That's exactly what it is. The sky's vast. You don't realize how vast it is until you're out looking at it. And you need to be able to find your way about it, you know, without necessarily a map in your hand. So learning your constellations and learning these fundamental asterisms and shapes really does help you to find some extremely interesting objects in the night sky.
Eric, thank you very much indeed for joining us. And we round off with a couple of messages. First of all, it's just to say that you can join us around the table at the Peedie Kirk lunch and have an opportunity to speak to Eric and ask more about the night sky for absolute beginners, and Monica, and find out more about her studies of harbour seals in Orkney. That's a link that should be in our chat line at the moment. And then also we'll be in action at 2 o'clock with Mr. Boom and the Vintage Rally, 2 separate streams. But in the meantime, I'd simply say thank you for joining us and goodbye for now.